Jamie Oliver has a shocking track record of making people very, very angry, and often the anger is for good reason. You know, like the time some of his unfounded comments cost hundreds of jobs. These are the times Jamie Oliver made more enemies than friends. Jamie Oliver started his food revolution show with the best of intentions: go into school districts and help them feed kids right. Everyone can agree that's a noble goal. But when he headed to Huntington, West Virginia in 2009, well, they weren't exactly happy to see him.
Jamie, what it is, I really want to like you because you're a likable guy. I just don't know if I trust you.
It was just after the city had been named the unhealthiest in the country, and no one really wanted him putting them under the spotlight. There was more to the differences than just that, though. It turned out that locals just didn't want some outsider coming in and berating them into eating healthy, especially in a manner that was less than understanding.
This is going to kill your children.
Oliver's comments succeeded in getting some serious hate thrown Huntington's way. The school's food service director, Rhonda McCoy, was bombarded with hate mail, and everyone was calling for her resignation. But here's the thing. After Oliver swept through and made his changes, the school was worse off. A whopping 77% of students didn't like or eat lunch anymore, and many were throwing it away. That's a huge problem because Huntington was a town devastated by a collapse in their manufacturing sector that relied on school lunches to feed their kids. With no one buying lunches, staff started to get laid off. Oh, and the food didn't even meet the U.S. Department of Agriculture's standards because it was too high in fat. The punchline? By 2017, McCoy had ditched Oliver's changes, revamped the school menu herself, and made it a healthy one that kids would actually eat. Jamie Oliver and his wife, Jules, have a fairly large brood of children, and in 2016, he made some comments that made it clear he believed his fatherhood made him qualified to tell the women of the world just why they needed to start breastfeeding their babies. He remarked, "If you breastfeed for more than 6 months, women are 50% less likely to get breast cancer." When do you ever hear that? Never. It's easy. It's more convenient. It's more nutritious. It's better. It's free. While some were quick to point out that more breastfeeding mothers need to be given proper resources before breastfeeding could even become something done 100% of the time, others condemned the fact that he called it easy. For many women, it's not a choice they can make. There's a lot of reasons women decide not to breastfeed, and for some, it's just physically impossible. Victoria Young wrote in The Telegraph about not just the difficulties she had, but the guilt and feelings of inadequacy that were devastating to her. That's just a small part of why the world told Oliver he needed to keep his mouth shut on the subject. Both men and women from all over called Oliver out because of his comments, which were exactly the type that made countless women feel bad about something they couldn't necessarily help. In 2016, Jamie Oliver shared his recipe for paella on Twitter. Paella, for anyone not up on their Spanish cuisine, is typically made with shellfish, shrimp, fish, various vegetables, and served over seasoned rice. Oliver made a big deal of his inclusion of chorizo, and social media was outraged. To many in Spain, it wasn't just a bad recipe, it was taking a dish that embodied their culinary landscape and turning it into what some were calling, quote, rice with stuff. One tweet summed up the controversy succinctly, saying, quote, "This is an insult not only to our gastronomy, but to our culture." Add in the fact that Oliver's recipe came during massive political upheaval across Spain, and that didn't help the rage. But it did help unify an entire country against him. Later, Oliver appeared on The Graham Norton Show, and of course, the topic came up. Oliver said it had gotten so bad he had received death threats over the ill-advised recipe. But did he apologize? He had this to say.
By the way, just FYI, it tastes better with chorizo. Trust me or don't trust me.
You're starting it again! Stop it!
In 2018, the UK kicked off a campaign to try to lower the amount of sugar in the average person's diet. The so-called sugar tax would raise the price of soft drinks, and it goes without saying that Jamie Oliver was one of the campaign's staunchest supporters. Not long after the price hike kicked in, The Telegraph reported he was already campaigning for extending the products covered to include other high-sugar foods. But there was a bit of a catch. Way back in 2016, when he started celebrating his war on sugar, people were quick to point out that he should really practice what he preached. A quick look at the recipes on his website showed an almost insane amount of sugar in some of them, right in plain sight and in recipes aimed at children. Many of his drinks called for tablespoons of sugar per drink, and his children's party cake contained 3 times the recommended amount of daily sugar per slice. There was a supposedly healthy breakfast that had more sugar in it than a bowl of Frosties, and he even had a recipe for gammon ham that called for 4 liters of cola. Basically, people saw some hypocrisy at work, and they didn't let Oliver get away with it. Stop by a Shell service station in the UK and you're likely to see something surprising: the Jamie Oliver Deli. Oliver worked with the gas giant to create and sell around 80 different products, but not everyone is impressed with the partnership. When it was announced in 2018, environmental groups were quick to call him out on the apparent hypocrisy. Shell, The Guardian says, has been linked to everything from destroying the environment and contributing to climate change to involving themselves in billion-dollar bribes, charges which Shell denies. But given that Oliver has been lauded by the UN for his work as a, quote, environment champion, it seems like the two are completely at odds, which is what led people to accuse him of selling out for a nearly $6.3 million payday. Oliver addressed the controversy by pointing out that he was just making food available to people, saying, "I think I've earned trust over the last 20 years, and I would hope that people think I've thought about it correctly. My job's to work for the British public and push Shell to be the best we can be, and also disrupt the market." In 2013, Jamie Oliver was kicking off a new show called Save with Jamie. That's all well and good, but in the run-up to the show, he made some shockingly tone-deaf statements about poverty. Critics were quick to point out that talk like that is especially gauche when your net worth is in the millions. Among the comments that raised particular ire was his condemnation of a family struggling to make ends meet who were eating, quote, chips and cheese out of styrofoam containers, and behind them is a massive TV, leading Oliver to suggest that the family didn't have their priorities right when it came to finances. Jack Monroe from The Independent called the comments, quote, not only out of touch, but supportive of dangerous and damaging myths. But the backlash didn't stop there. Oliver went on to lament how he couldn't transport Britain's poor to the Mediterranean, where he claimed even the poorest people ate really well. He sang the praises of affordable mussels and pasta and fresh tomatoes, while ignoring the fact that in 2010, Barcelona had a higher percentage of citizens relying on food banks than Britain did. And things there were dire. Reporting by the New Statesman said that many couldn't even afford to cook what they'd been given, relying on social dining rooms to serve them their hot meals after their gas and electricity were cut off. As they put it, poverty isn't picturesque by the Mediterranean either. You've heard of pink slime, right? Did you know you can thank Jamie Oliver for popularizing the whole idea? That's according to a $1.2 billion lawsuit filed against ABC for airing the episode of Food Revolution where he made the comments. The lawsuit was filed by Beef Products, Inc., a processing firm in South Dakota who had their products targeted and condemned as being filled with ammonia. The negative publicity had catastrophic consequences for the company. Stores started dropping their products, and that led to an 80% drop in sales. 3 of the company's 4 plants were closed, and 700 people lost their jobs. According to The Independent, a huge part of the problem was Oliver's claims.
Okay, this is not fit for human consumption.
They also weren't happy with his demonstration of how meat was processed. In lieu of having access to the actual equipment, Oliver's show used a washing machine and household ammonia. All of that, the company said, was grossly misleading. Surprisingly, Oliver wasn't even named on the lawsuit, which ABC and Disney reportedly paid $177 million to settle. It's not just people in his native Britain that have a problem with Jamie Oliver. In 2014, he outraged Australia after he teamed up with the grocery store Woolworths for an advertising campaign promoting the importance of produce. That's not offensive in itself. But problems started when it came out that the cost of the campaign was being passed along to the farmers and growers it was supposed to be benefiting. They were being charged 40 cents on each crate of vegetables, and that adds up fast. One farmer found himself faced with owing about $200,000 over the course of the 6 weeks the campaign was running. Representatives appealed to Oliver to side with the farmers and ask Woolworths to stop requiring the payments. Smart Company says that Oliver responded he was just an employee of the company and didn't have any say over business decisions, while Woolworths said the payment was completely voluntary. After an investigation by the Australian Consumer and Competition Commission, Woolworths was cleared of wrongdoing, to the outrage of many farmers and their representatives. When Jamie Oliver took a stand against the way in which many commercially sold chickens have historically been raised, he made it clear he was really against it. He characterized established practices as being morally wrong and called on viewers to change the way they shop to put pressure on the industry to be more responsible. Where's the problem? That came when it was revealed he had signed a multi-million-dollar deal with the massive UK supermarket giant Sainsbury's. The director of the animal rights organization Animal Aid put it this way: if he's going to lecture the public, he needs first to stop profiting from animal exploitation. For Sainsbury's part, the company confirmed plans to move to conform to food standards put forward by the RSPCA, but also claimed that those standards only applied to eggs and that they had no plans to change their practices regarding the 90 million chickens they sold annually. Later that same year, in 2008, Sainsbury's announced that they were expanding their animal welfare programs to cover chickens too. It was a move which Oliver partially took credit for. Jamie Oliver is an equal opportunity annoyer, and in 2017, it was Iceland's turn to take issue with him. It started when he posted a photo of the place he was sourcing salmon from for his new restaurant, the Arnarlax Salmon Farm. What followed was a deluge of comments condemning his support of the controversial farm. One of the biggest problems environmentalists and farmers had with Arnarlax was that they had imported Norwegian salmon, and there were serious fears that the fish would escape and do permanent damage to the environment and native species. While Oliver's social media team worked to reassure concerned consumers, people weren't buying into the reassurances, and boycotts against Oliver's businesses were threatened. It should be a reaction he's used to by now. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more mashed videos about your favorite chefs are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.